Captain Marcus Chen stared at the impossible readings on his tactical display. The massive ship approaching Earth's orbital defense grid wasn't in any database, yet its energy signature bore unmistakable human origins. After 3 years of radio silence from the deep space exploration vessel Prometheus, most had assumed the worst. The galaxy was a dangerous place, filled with hostile alien civilizations that viewed humanity as nothing more than upstart primitives. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," Communications Officer Riley announced, her voice tight with disbelief. "It's from the Prometheus. They're requesting immediate docking clearance for 2 vessels." Marcus felt his heart skip. His daughter Sarah had been aboard the Prometheus as their xenobiologist when it disappeared beyond the Kepler Nebula. 3 years of sleepless nights of wondering if she was alive, dead, or something worse. The galaxy had taught humanity that there were fates worse than death. "Put them through," Marcus ordered, his voice barely steady. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a familiar face that made Marcus's knees weak with relief. Sarah stood on what appeared to be the bridge of an unknown vessel, but she looked different, stronger, more confident. Her exploration suit had been replaced by clothing that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly quality. "Dad," Sarah's voice carried across the void, warm with emotion. "Permission to come home?" Marcus found himself laughing and crying simultaneously. "Granted, sweetheart. God, Sarah, we thought you were dead. The entire crew. What happened out there?" Sarah's expression grew complex, a mixture of joy and something else Marcus couldn't identify. "It's a long story, Dad, but I'm not alone. I'm bringing someone very important to meet you, to meet all of humanity." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, the view shifted and Marcus felt his breath catch. Standing beside his daughter was a being that defied everything he thought he knew about alien life. She appeared humanoid, but with an ethereal quality that suggested something far beyond human evolution. Her skin held a subtle luminescence, and her eyes contained depths that seemed to hold the wisdom of millennia. "Dad," Sarah said, her voice filled with a mixture of nervousness and pride. "This is Zarathis. She's the supreme matriarch of the Celestial Dominion." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. The Celestial Dominion controlled 1/3 of the known galaxy. They were ancient, powerful, and had never shown interest in lesser species except to subjugate or eliminate them. Every human military strategist's worst nightmare involved the Dominion taking notice of Earth. Zarathis stepped forward, her movements graceful beyond human capability. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in Marcus's very bones. "Captain Chen, I come seeking an audience with your species' leadership. Your daughter has shown me wonders about humanity that I never imagined possible." "Wonders?" Marcus managed to ask, his military training warring with parental relief and diplomatic terror. Sarah smiled, the same bright expression she'd worn as a child when showing him her latest discovery. "Dad, humans are unique in the galaxy, not because we're stronger or smarter than other species, but because we're the only ones who figured out how to truly love without boundaries. When the Prometheus was captured by Dominion forces, we expected execution or slavery. Instead," she glanced at Zarathis with an expression that made Marcus's heart stop. It was the same look Sarah's mother had given him 30 years ago when she'd accepted his proposal. "Instead," Zarathis continued, "your daughter taught me something my people had forgotten over millions of years of existence. She taught me that strength isn't about domination or control. It's about protection, sacrifice, and the willingness to see beauty in those different from yourself." Marcus watched in stunned silence as the most powerful being in known space reached out and gently took his daughter's hand. The gesture was so tender, so completely at odds with everything humanity knew about the Celestial Dominion, that Marcus wondered if he was dreaming. "The Dominion has ruled through fear for eons," Zarathis explained. "We've conquered thousands of species, believing that only the strong deserve to survive. But your daughter showed me something extraordinary when she risked her life to save mine during a stellar collapse in the nebula. She didn't know who I was, didn't know my power. She simply saw a being in danger and acted." Sarah's cheeks flushed slightly. "It wasn't anything special, Dad. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Zarathis said firmly. "That's exactly what makes humanity remarkable. What you consider normal, the rest of the galaxy sees as impossible. Compassion for enemies, sacrifice for strangers, love that transcends species barriers." Marcus felt the weight of galactic politics crushing down on him. "What are you saying?" Zarathis straightened, and suddenly Marcus could see the authority that commanded star systems. I'm saying that humanity possesses something precious that the galaxy has lost. Something we need to learn if we're to survive the growing darkness beyond the rim. Ancient evils are stirring, Captain Chen. Entities that make the Dominion look like children playing with toys. And you want our help? Marcus asked, incredulous. I want more than that, Zarathis replied, her luminous gaze shifting to Sarah with unmistakable affection. I want to unite our peoples, not through conquest but through alliance, through understanding, through... She paused, seeming almost nervous for the first time since the conversation began. Sarah squeezed her hand encouragingly. It's okay. Tell him. Zarathis took what Marcus assumed was the equivalent of a deep breath. Captain Chen, I wish to formally request permission to bond with your daughter according to both human and celestial customs. In human terms, I believe you would call it marriage. The silence that followed could have been measured in geological ages. Marcus stared at the screen, his mind reeling. His daughter had not only survived first contact with the galaxy's most dangerous civilization, but had somehow managed to win the heart of their supreme leader. The implications were staggering. I know it's a lot to process, Sarah said gently. But Dad, she's not what the intelligence reports say. The Dominion has been preparing for something terrible coming from beyond the galaxy. They've been gathering strength not for conquest but for survival, and they believe humanity might be the key to victory. Marcus looked at his daughter, really looked at her. The uncertain young scientist who had left 3 years ago was gone, replaced by someone who had stared into the abyss of galactic politics and emerged not just intact, but triumphant. How long do we have to prepare? He asked finally. Zarathis smiled, an expression that transformed her alien features into something almost human. Years, perhaps decades. But the fact that you ask how long to prepare instead of how can we hide proves your daughter's point about humanity's remarkable nature. As the transmission ended, Marcus realized that everything was about to change. His little girl had returned home, but she'd brought the galaxy with her. The emergency session of the United Earth Council had been called within hours of the transmission. President Elena Vasquez sat at the head of the circular table, surrounded by military advisors, scientists, and diplomats who all wore expressions ranging from terror to excitement. The holographic display in the center showed tactical readouts of the two massive vessels holding position just beyond Earth's defense perimeter. Let me understand this correctly, General Harrison said, his weathered face grim. The most powerful military force in the galaxy wants to marry into humanity because a xenobiologist saved their leader's life? Dr. Emily Foster, Earth's leading xenopsychologist, leaned forward. It's not that simple, General. From what Captain Chen has reported, this isn't just about personal affection. The Celestial Dominion sees something in humanity that they believe is crucial for survival against an unnamed threat. Or it's an elaborate invasion strategy, Intelligence Director Wong interjected. We know nothing about celestial mating customs. This could be their version of a Trojan horse. President Vasquez raised her hand for silence. What does our xenobiology team think? Is interspecies bonding even possible? Dr. Foster consulted her tablet. Theoretically, yes. We've discovered that most sapient species share certain quantum resonance patterns in their neural activity. It's what allows for universal translation and empathic connection, but emotional bonding at the level they're suggesting would require unprecedented compatibility. Captain Chen, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Madam President, I've known my daughter her entire life. She's brilliant, cautious, and utterly incapable of deception. If she says the Dominion is preparing for a greater threat, and that they need our help, I believe her. With respect, Captain, General Harrison replied. Parental bias isn't a basis for galactic policy. Before Chen could respond, the communications array chimed. Madam President, the technician announced, we're receiving another transmission from the celestial vessel. They're requesting permission to send a diplomatic shuttle to the surface. Vasquez felt the weight of human history pressing down on her shoulders. Every decision from this moment forward would echo through the centuries. What are their specifications for the meeting? They want to land at the United Nations building in New York, a delegation of 3. Sarah Chen, the Supreme Matriarch, and someone they're calling a cultural translator. They're also requesting that Captain Chen and our top diplomatic team be present. Dr. Foster looked up from her calculations. Madam President, The energy readings from their ships suggest technology centuries beyond our current capabilities. If they wanted to harm us, they wouldn't need subterfuge. Or they want to make a statement, General Harrison countered. Landing at the UN sends a clear message about their intentions for global governance. Vasquez made her decision. Grant them permission. But I want every defense grid on standby, and I want our best minds analyzing every second of this encounter. She turned to Captain Chen. Marcus, I need you to remember that you're not just a father in this situation. You're representing all of humanity. 3 hours later, the shuttle that descended through Earth's atmosphere defied every principle of human aerospace engineering. It moved without visible propulsion, made no sound, and seemed to bend light around its hull. When it touched down on the carefully cleared plaza outside the UN building, it did so with the gentleness of a falling leaf. Sarah was the first to emerge, and Captain Chen had to restrain himself from running to embrace her. She wore robes similar to those they'd seen on the transmission, but now he could see the intricate patterns woven throughout the fabric. They seemed to shift and move independently, creating an almost hypnotic effect. Zarathis followed, and in person her otherworldly nature was even more apparent. She stood nearly 7 feet tall with proportions that were clearly humanoid, but refined beyond human possibility. Her movements held a liquid grace that suggested either extensive genetic modification or an entirely different evolutionary path. The third figure surprised everyone. It appeared completely human, down to the slight paunch and graying temples that suggested middle age. Only the same quality of clothing marked him as part of the celestial delegation. "Dad," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly across the plaza, "thank you for trusting us." The human-appearing figure stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Reeves. I was once like you, a human explorer who encountered the Dominion. That was 60 years ago." The implication sent a chill through the assembled diplomats. 60 years, and he appeared barely middle-aged. President Vasquez stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth. I am Elena Vasquez, President of the United Earth Council. We are honored by your visit, though I admit we're uncertain about your intentions." Zarathis inclined her head in what was clearly a gesture of respect. "President Vasquez, I come not as a conqueror but as a supplicant. My people face extinction, and we believe humanity holds the key to our survival." "What threat could possibly endanger the celestial dominion?" Dr. Foster asked. Ambassador Reeves answered. "Have you ever wondered why the galaxy seems so empty? Why, despite billions of habitable worlds, sapient life is so rare?" The question sent a ripple of unease through the human delegation. "Every few million years," Zarathis continued, "something sweeps through the galaxy. We call them the harvesters. They consume not just life, but the very essence of consciousness itself. Entire civilizations vanish without a trace, leaving behind only empty worlds and broken technology. The Dominion survived the last harvest by hiding in the galactic rim," Ambassador Reeves explained. "We've spent the intervening time building strength, preparing for their return. But all our power, all our technology isn't enough. We've run the calculations 1,000 times. Sarah stepped closer to her father. "Dad, the harvesters aren't just destroying civilizations. They're adapting to each one they encounter. Every strategy, every weapon, every defense they've seen becomes useless against them." "Then how can humanity help?" Captain Chen asked. Zarathis smiled, and the expression transformed her alien features with genuine warmth. "Because humanity does something no other species has ever done. You surprise us. Your daughter's actions in the nebula weren't just compassionate. They were completely unpredictable by any standard model of behavior. The harvesters rely on predictability," Ambassador Reeves added. "They study their prey, learn their patterns, then exploit those patterns to ensure total victory. But humans are beautifully chaotically unpredictable," Sarah finished. "When faced with impossible odds, other species calculate optimal survival strategies or prepare for honorable defeat. Humans do something else entirely." "What?" President Vasquez asked. "You improvise," Zarathis said. "You create solutions that don't exist. You find third options when only two are presented. You turn certain defeat into impossible victory through methods that no logical mind could anticipate." Dr. Foster frowned. "That sounds less like a tactical advantage and more like random luck." Ambassador Reeves chuckled. "I thought the same thing 60 years ago. Then I watched humans turn a dying colony ship into a thriving civilization, using nothing but salvaged parts and stubborn refusal to accept defeat. What you call improvisation, we've learned to recognize as a fundamental force of nature. The marriage proposal, President Vasquez said slowly. It's not just personal, is it? Zarathis took Sarah's hand, and the gesture seemed to make both beings glow slightly. It is deeply personal. Your daughter has shown me what love means, what hope feels like after eons of merely existing. But it's also symbolic. The union of our peoples, the blending of celestial knowledge with human innovation. How long do we have? General Harrison asked. The advanced scouts have already been detected in the outer rim, Zarathis replied. Perhaps 5 years before the main force arrives. Enough time to prepare if we work together. Sarah looked directly at her father. Dad, I know this is overwhelming, but I've seen what's coming. I've studied the records of previous harvests. If we don't unite now, if we don't combine our strengths, everything we've ever loved will be lost. Captain Chen studied his daughter's face, seeing the weight of galactic responsibility in her eyes. What do you need from us? Everything, Zarathis replied simply. Your creativity, your resilience, your refusal to accept the impossible. In return, we offer our technology, our knowledge, our strength. President Vasquez looked around the circle of advisors, seeing fear and hope warring in their expressions. And if we refuse? Then we all face extinction separately, Ambassador Reeves said quietly. And the universe loses its last best hope for survival. The private dinner in the UN's diplomatic quarters was unlike anything in human history. President Vasquez had insisted on a smaller, more intimate gathering to discuss the alliance proposal. Around the table sat Sarah, Zarathis, Ambassador Reeves, Captain Chen, Dr. Foster, and herself. The formal protocols had been set aside in favor of honest conversation. I still don't understand how this bonding ceremony would work, Dr. Foster said, cutting into what appeared to be perfectly normal chicken, though she suspected the celestial delegates had made some adjustments to accommodate their physiology. Zarathis set down her utensils with careful precision. In celestial culture, bonding is not merely a social contract. It is a literal joining of consciousness, a sharing of essence that creates a permanent neural link between partners. Sarah reached across the table to touch the doctor's hand. Emily, remember when we studied quantum entanglement and neural networks? It's similar, but far more profound. Zara and I have already begun the process. That's how I know with absolute certainty that her intentions are genuine. Captain Chen nearly choked on his wine. You've already begun? Sarah, the implications for your cognitive independence are exactly what I chose, Dad, Sarah replied firmly. The link doesn't control or diminish. It enhances. I can feel Zara's emotions, understand her thoughts, and she can do the same with mine. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. Ambassador Reeves smiled knowingly. I remember my first concerns about celestial bonding practices. But after 60 years with my partner, I can tell you that the shared consciousness doesn't reduce individuality. It amplifies it. President Vasquez leaned forward. What are the practical implications for humanity? If our species begin intermarrying, what happens to human genetic integrity? An excellent question, Zarathis responded. Celestial bonding is not primarily genetic, though it can result in offspring. The children of such unions tend to possess the best qualities of both species, while developing entirely new capabilities. Dr. Foster's scientific curiosity overcame her diplomatic caution. What kind of capabilities? Sarah and Zarathis exchanged a glance that seemed to carry entire conversations. Show them, Sarah said softly. Zarathis nodded and closed her eyes. The air around her began to shimmer, and suddenly the room filled with images that hung suspended in midair like three-dimensional holograms. But these weren't technological projections. They were memories made visible. The assembled humans watched in awe as scenes played out before them. Vast, stellar civilizations reduced to ash, planets stripped of all life, entire star systems going dark as something vast and incomprehensible swept through them. But there were other images, too. Moments of incredible beauty, worlds where celestial and other species had worked together to create wonders beyond imagination. This is our history, Zarathis said, her eyes still closed. 10 million years of existence condensed into essential moments. Sarah can now access all of this, just as I can access her memories of humanity. The images shifted, showing Sarah's memories from a human perspective. Her childhood with her father, her first steps into space, her training as a xenobiologist. But viewed through celestial consciousness, even the most mundane human experiences took on profound significance. Captain Chen watched his daughter's 5th birthday party play out in the air before him, but now he could feel the emotional resonance that Zarathus experienced viewing it. To the ancient being, the simple joy of a human child surrounded by family was a revelation of light in cosmic darkness. "We see patterns," Ambassador Reeves explained as the images faded. "Celestials live for millions of years, but they've forgotten how to experience wonder. Humans live for decades, but you pack more genuine emotion and growth into those brief spans than most species achieve in millennia." President Vasquez struggled to process what she'd witnessed. "The bonding ceremony you're proposing, it would be broadcast?" "To every celestial world and to all of humanity," Zarathus confirmed. "It must be public to have the proper symbolic impact. The union of our species' highest representative with a human explorer, blessed by both our governing bodies." Sarah looked directly at her father. "Dad, I need you to understand something. This isn't just politics for me. I love her. When I thought I was going to die in that stellar collapse, the last thing I expected was to find someone who would make me feel more human than I ever had before." "How is that possible?" Dr. Foster asked. "Because she sees us the way we see ourselves in our best moments," Sarah replied. "Through her consciousness, I experience human creativity and compassion as cosmic forces. She's shown me that what we consider normal emotions are actually rare and precious energies that most of the galaxy has lost." Zarathus opened her eyes, which now held flecks of color that definitely hadn't been there at the beginning of the meal. "Your daughter has given me something I thought was lost forever. Hope. Not the calculated optimism of strategic planning, but genuine hope rooted in irrational faith that things can be better." Ambassador Reeves chuckled. "The first time my celestial partner experienced human humor, she laughed for 3 days straight. Not because it was funny, but because the very concept of finding joy in the unexpected was alien to her species." "What about the practical aspects?" President Vasquez asked. "Timeline, location, security considerations?" "The ceremony can take place anywhere that holds significance for both species," Zarathus replied. "Many Celestials would prefer one of our sacred worlds, but I believe the symbolic value would be greater if it occurred on Earth." Captain Chen found his voice. "Sarah, are you certain about this? Once you're bonded, can it be undone?" Sarah's expression grew serious. "Dad, the link we've already formed could theoretically be severed, but it would cause permanent psychological damage to both of us. More importantly, I don't want it undone. Zarathus has shown me wonders beyond imagination. But more than that, she's shown me myself through the eyes of someone who values what makes humans special. The ceremony itself is quite beautiful," Ambassador Reeves added. "It involves a sharing of essential memories, a joining of consciousness witnessed by both communities, and a vow to protect each other's species as if they were one." Dr. Foster pulled out her tablet. "I need to understand the neurological implications. If human celestial bonding becomes common, we're talking about accelerated evolution on a scale never before seen. Which brings us to the children question," President Vasquez said delicately. Zarathus and Sarah exchanged another of their wordless communications. "Celestial human offspring develop quickly," Zarathus explained. "They tend to reach intellectual maturity within 5 Earth years, but they retain human emotional development patterns. The result is beings with vast knowledge but maintained capacity for wonder and growth." "How many such children exist?" Captain Chen asked. "Currently fewer than a dozen," Ambassador Reeves replied. "But each one represents a bridge between species, a living symbol of what cooperation can achieve." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "The wedding is just the beginning. If humanity agrees to the alliance, we're talking about shared colonies, joint research projects, combined military forces. Within a generation, the distinction between human and celestial might become meaningless." "And the harvesters?" President Vasquez asked. Zarathus's expression grew grim. "They've never encountered a bonded civilization before. Their strategy relies on exploiting the weaknesses of individual species. But a truly united humanity and dominion would possess capabilities that neither could achieve alone." "Such as?" Dr. Foster prompted. "Human intuition guided by celestial knowledge," Sarah replied. "Celestial technology powered by human innovation. Military strategies that combine dominion discipline with human unpredictability." Ambassador Reeves nodded. The preliminary model suggests that such a union could not only survive a harvester attack, but potentially drive them back permanently. Captain Chen studied his daughter's face. Seeing the woman she'd become overlaid with memories of the child she'd been. "When do you want to hold the ceremony?" Sarah smiled, the expression lighting up her face in a way that made her look impossibly young and infinitely wise simultaneously. "Tomorrow, if possible. Every day we wait is another day the galaxy remains divided." President Vasquez felt the weight of species survival settling on her shoulders. "Then I suppose we have a wedding to plan." The ceremony location had been chosen with careful symbolism. The plaza where humanity had first set foot on Luna, now transformed into an amphitheater that could accommodate representatives from both species. Earth hung in the black sky above, a blue marble that seemed impossibly fragile against the cosmic darkness. Captain Chen stood in his dress uniform, feeling the weight of every medal and ribbon he'd ever earned. As Sarah's father, he would have the honor of formally presenting her to the assembled gathering. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was giving away his daughter to secure the survival of the human race. The human delegation filled one side of the amphitheater: world leaders, military commanders, scientists, and carefully selected citizens chosen to represent the diversity of human experience. Across from them, the celestial delegation was smaller but no less impressive. Beings of impossible beauty and grace, each one emanating an aura of ancient wisdom and barely contained power. At the center of the amphitheater, a fusion of human and celestial technology had created something unprecedented. A bonding altar that existed partially in normal space and partially in what the Celestials called the essence realm. To human eyes, it appeared as a crystalline structure that seemed to shift between dimensions, sometimes solid, sometimes translucent, always beautiful. Ambassador Reeves had spent the morning explaining the ceremony to the human representatives. "The key thing to understand," he'd said, "is that this isn't just a wedding. It's a fundamental rewriting of how consciousness works for both participants." Dr. Foster had been fascinated by the technical aspects. The neural link they'll establish will create a permanent quantum entanglement between their minds. They'll share not just thoughts and emotions, but actual memories and experiences. Now, as the ceremony began, the full implications became clear. Zarathis entered the amphitheater in robes that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, each step causing ripples of energy to flow through the fabric. Her presence was so overwhelming that several humans had to look away, unable to process the sheer magnitude of her existence. Sarah followed, wearing a gown that combined human artistry with celestial materials. The dress appeared to be made of earth silk, but patterns of light moved through it in ways that suggested something far more sophisticated. She moved with a new confidence, her earlier nervousness replaced by absolute certainty. The officiant was a being so ancient that Ambassador Reeves whispered it had been old when the celestial dominion was young. It spoke in harmonics that bypassed human ears and resonated directly in the consciousness of everyone present. "We gather to witness the joining of consciousness, the union of species, the birth of new possibility." The words formed in everyone's mind simultaneously. "Sarah Chen of Terra, do you offer your essence freely to this bonding?" Sarah's voice carried clearly across the amphitheater, enhanced by celestial acoustics that made every word resonate with perfect clarity. "I offer my essence, my memories, my future, and my species' hopes to this union." "Zarathis of the Dominion, do you offer your essence freely to this bonding?" "I offer my essence, my knowledge, my power, and my people's protection to this union." What happened next defied every law of physics that humanity understood. The bonding altar began to glow, and suddenly everyone present could see into both participants' minds. It wasn't invasive or overwhelming. Rather, it felt like being offered a glimpse into the most beautiful library in the universe. Through Sarah's consciousness, the humans saw her memories of first contact, the terror of capture, the gradual realization that her captors weren't monsters, the growing respect and eventually love for a being who could have crushed her without effort, but instead chose to learn from her. Through Zarathis's consciousness, the Celestials experienced something none of them had felt in eons: the raw, immediate emotions of a young species discovering its place in the galaxy. They felt Sarah's wonder at seeing distant stars, her determination to understand alien cultures, her fierce protectiveness of her fellow humans. but the sharing went deeper than individual memories. Suddenly, humans could perceive the vast scope of celestial civilization, cities that spanned continents, technologies that could reshape matter at the atomic level, knowledge accumulated over millions of years of existence. The sheer scale of it should have been crushing, but filtered through Sarah's love for Zarathis, it became inspiring rather than intimidating. Simultaneously, Celestials experienced the intensity of human existence, the way decades of life could contain more growth and change than millennia of their own existence, the incredible creativity that arose from mortality, the bonds of family and friendship that gave meaning to brief lives. Captain Chen watched his daughter's consciousness merge with that of the most powerful being in the galaxy, and instead of losing her, he felt like he was seeing her truly for the first time. Through celestial perception, Sarah's compassion wasn't just a personality trait. It was a force of nature, a fundamental energy that could reshape the galaxy itself. The ceremonial exchange of vows took place on multiple levels simultaneously. Verbally, they spoke words that had been carefully crafted to honor both human and celestial traditions. But more importantly, they shared core memories that would become part of their joint consciousness. Sarah offered her memory of Earth's first sunrise, the moment when early humans looked up at the sky and dreamed of touching the stars. Zarathis shared her memory of the first time the Celestials encountered a species that created art for beauty alone, not for function or status. As the bonding deepened, something unexpected happened. The neural link between Sarah and Zarathis began to extend outward, touching the minds of everyone present. It wasn't invasive or controlling. Instead, it was like being invited to join a vast conversation that spanned species. Humans felt the weight of celestial responsibility, the burden of protecting younger species, the loneliness of being among the galaxy's eldest races, the growing fear of the approaching harvesters. But they also felt something the Celestials had lost, hope based not on calculation but on faith, the belief that impossible things could become possible through determination and love. Celestials experienced human resilience, the ability to find humor in dark situations, the refusal to accept defeat even when victory seemed impossible, the fierce loyalty that made humans willing to sacrifice everything for their families and ideals. Dr. Foster, who had been taking readings throughout the ceremony, stared at her instruments in amazement. "The neural resonance patterns," she whispered to President Vasquez. "They're not just linking Sarah and Zarathis. They're creating a network that includes everyone here." The ancient officiant raised what might have been arms, and the light from the bonding altar expanded to encompass the entire amphitheater. "Let this union stand as proof that consciousness knows no barriers, that love transcends species, that together we are greater than the sum of our parts." As the light faded, Sarah and Zarathis stood hand in hand, but they were clearly changed. Sarah's eyes now held depths that spoke of ancient wisdom, while Zarathis moved with a vibrancy that suggested newfound appreciation for the moment. More importantly, everyone present could feel the connection between them, not as an intrusion but as a promise. Ambassador Reeves stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. "Citizens of Terra and the Dominion, I present to you the first bonded pair of our united species. Through their union we forge a new path forward, one that leads not to conquest or submission but to true partnership." Captain Chen approached his daughter, hardly knowing what to say. Sarah smiled and embraced him, and suddenly he could feel what she felt. Not loss of humanity, but expansion of it. Through her bond with Zarathis, she had become more herself than ever before. "Dad," she whispered, "now you understand. We're not losing anything. We're becoming everything we were meant to be." As the ceremony concluded and the delegates began to mingle, the real work began. This had been more than a wedding. It had been the birth of a new form of consciousness, a hybrid of human creativity and celestial wisdom that might just be powerful enough to face the coming darkness. Earth hung above them in the lunar sky, no longer a single world but the heart of something larger, something that could span the galaxy and beyond. 6 months after the Unity ceremony, Earth had become unrecognizable. Celestial construction vessels worked alongside human engineering teams to transform the planet into something unprecedented. A fortress world that retained its natural beauty while bristling with defensive capabilities that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the orbital command station, watching shuttles ferry materials between Earth and the growing fleet of hybrid vessels. Her consciousness now existed on multiple levels simultaneously. Human intuition guided by celestial knowledge, emotions amplified by ancient wisdom, creativity enhanced by millions of years of accumulated experience. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Many humans struggled to accept the rapid changes to their world, while some Celestials questioned whether sharing their most guarded secrets with such a young species was wise. But the results were undeniable. In 6 months, the Alliance had achieved technological breakthroughs that would have taken either species centuries to accomplish alone. Captain Chen approached, his uniform now bearing insignia that represented both human military traditions and celestial command structures. As the newly appointed Joint Defense Coordinator, he'd spent the past months learning to think on galactic scales while maintaining the tactical flexibility that made humans unique. "The latest intelligence reports are troubling," he said, handing Sarah a datapad that interfaced directly with her enhanced consciousness. "The Harvester Advanced Scouts have reached the inner rim. They're moving faster than the Celestials predicted." Sarah absorbed the information instantaneously, her hybrid consciousness processing patterns that would have taken purely human minds hours to analyze. They're adapting their approach based on what they've learned about the Dominion's preparations. "But Dad, look at this movement pattern. It's too structured, too predictable." Meaning they haven't accounted for human unpredictability yet. They're still planning to face the Celestial Dominion alone. Sarah's eyes gleamed with an intensity that combined human mischief with celestial strategic thinking. "They have no idea what we've become." Zarathis materialized beside them, her form shifting between physical presence and energy manifestation. After the bonding, she'd gained the ability to exist in multiple states simultaneously, a development that had fascinated celestial scientists. "The Council of Matriarchs has approved the final phase of preparation. It's time to show you what we've been building." They transported to the planet's surface, appearing in what had once been the Sahara Desert, but was now something far more extraordinary. Stretching to the horizon was a city that defied conventional architecture, its buildings flowing like organic structures while incorporating technology that bent reality itself. "Welcome to New Terra," Zarathis announced, "the first truly hybrid city, designed by human imagination and built with celestial capabilities." The city pulsed with life that was both familiar and alien. Human children played games that involved manipulating gravity, while celestial artisans learned to create beauty for its own sake rather than function. Streets flowed like rivers, carrying people through dimensions that shortened distances while expanding possibilities. At the city's heart stood the Strategic Command Center, a structure that existed simultaneously on Earth and in the celestial realm of pure thought. Inside, the greatest minds of both species worked together to prepare for the coming conflict. Dr. Foster looked up from a display showing fleet compositions that spanned half the galaxy. "Sarah, the integration is proceeding better than we dared hope. Human crews are adapting to celestial technology with remarkable speed, while celestial warriors are learning human tactics that make their ancient strategies far more effective." Ambassador Reeves gestured to a 3-dimensional map showing the galaxy's spiral arms. The Harvesters traditionally approach from multiple vectors, overwhelming their targets with sheer numbers. "But we've identified something they've never encountered before: coordinated unpredictability." Sarah studied the tactical displays, her consciousness interfacing directly with the strategic computers. They learn from each civilization they destroy, incorporating new techniques into their arsenal. But human improvisation doesn't follow logical patterns. "Every time they think they understand our approach, we'll change it completely." Captain Chen frowned at the strategic projections. "The numbers are still overwhelming. Even with all our preparations, we're talking about facing a force that has consumed galaxies." "True," Zarathis acknowledged, "but they've never faced a species that treats impossible odds as a personal challenge rather than a reason for surrender." A new presence entered the command center, and everyone turned to see one of the hybrid children. At 5 Earth years old, she possessed the intellectual capacity of a celestial scholar, combined with the emotional vibrancy of a human child. Her name was Luna, the daughter of a human engineer and a celestial researcher, and she represented the future both species were fighting to protect. "Aunt Sarah," Luna said, using the title she'd given to Sarah after the bonding. "I've been studying the Harvester data patterns. And I think I found something important. The adults exchanged glances. Luna's insights had already led to several breakthrough discoveries, her hybrid consciousness allowing her to perceive patterns that escaped purely human or celestial minds. "What did you find, sweetheart?" Sarah asked, kneeling to Luna's level. Luna projected her analysis into the room's display system with casual ease. The harvesters always attack the same way because they've never needed to change. But look at this pattern in their approach vectors. They're not just following optimal routes, they're avoiding something. The display showed harvester movement patterns across multiple galactic campaigns, and suddenly the avoidance pattern Luna had identified became obvious. In every case, the harvesters had taken longer, less efficient routes to avoid certain regions of space. Dr. Foster leaned forward intently. "Those regions don't show up on any of our threat assessments. What are they avoiding?" Luna's expression grew serious beyond her apparent years. "I think they're afraid of something that's been in the galaxy longer than they have." Zarathus studied the data with growing excitement. The ancient guardians. "We thought they were myths, legends created by the first Celestials to explain certain cosmic phenomena." "What guardians?" Captain Chen asked. Ambassador Reeves consulted his personal database, his expression growing amazed. "According to the oldest celestial records, when the first sapient species evolved in this galaxy, they found evidence of an even older civilization, one that had transcended physical existence entirely but left behind protections." Sarah felt a chill run through her hybrid consciousness. "Protections against what?" "Against the harvesters," Luna said simply. "But I think the Guardians have been waiting for something specific, a species that could bridge the gap between physical and transcendent existence." Zarathus and Sarah exchanged a look that carried entire conversations. Through their bond, they both reached the same conclusion simultaneously. "They've been waiting for us," Sarah whispered. "Not humans alone, not Celestials alone, but what we've become together." The implications were staggering. If Luna was correct, the human-celestial alliance wasn't just a desperate attempt at survival. It was the fulfillment of a plan millions of years in the making. Captain Chen studied his daughter's transformed features, seeing both the child he'd raised and the cosmic force she'd become. "How do we contact these guardians?" Luna smiled with an expression that combined childish delight with ancient wisdom. "We don't contact them, Grandpa Chen, we become them. That's what the bonding process really does. It creates beings capable of existing in both dimensions simultaneously." As if summoned by their conversation, alerts began chiming throughout the command center. Long-range sensors were detecting massive disturbances on the galactic rim. The Harvester main force had arrived, 3 years ahead of schedule. But for the first time since the threat had been identified, none of the assembled beings felt despair. Instead, they felt something that had been building since the moment Sarah first saved Zarathus in the Kepler Nebula. The absolute certainty that they were about to attempt something impossible. And that impossibility had never stopped humanity before. The real war was about to begin, and with it, the birth of something entirely new in the universe. The first wave of harvesters emerged from jump space like a nightmare made manifest. Ships the size of moons, their hulls black as the void between stars. They moved with predatory grace toward the outer colonies. Each vessel pulsed with an energy that seemed to devour light itself, leaving trails of absolute darkness in their wake. In the New Terra Command Center, every screen showed the same terrifying sight, a force so vast it seemed to blot out entire star systems. The Harvester fleet stretched across light years, a tide of annihilation that had consumed 1,000 galaxies. "Estimated fleet size?" Captain Chen asked, though his voice suggested he dreaded the answer. "Conservative estimate, 50 million combat vessels," Dr. Foster reported, her hands shaking as she read the sensor data. Each one individually capable of sterilizing a planet. Sarah felt Zarathus's consciousness merge more deeply with her own as they processed the tactical situation. Through their bond, she could sense the ancient being's genuine fear for the first time since they'd met. The Celestial Dominion had spent eons preparing for this moment, but the reality exceeded their worst projections. "The outer colonies are evacuating," Ambassador Reeves announced, "but they won't have time to complete the withdrawal. Kepler Station has maybe 6 hours before the first wave reaches them." Luna approached the central display, her hybrid consciousness interfacing directly with the galactic sensors. "The pattern is wrong," she said. her child's voice carrying absolute authority. Look at their formation. They're not just attacking, they're hurting us. The adults studied the display more carefully, and gradually the truth became apparent. The Harvester fleet wasn't moving in a standard conquest pattern. Instead, they were driving the retreating forces toward specific coordinates. They're pushing everyone toward Earth, Sarah realized. They want us concentrated in one location. A final battle, Zarathis confirmed. They've learned enough about our species to know that humans and Celestials both prefer to make a stand rather than submit to gradual defeat. Captain Chen felt a chill of recognition. It's what I would do in their position. Force your enemy to commit everything to defending what they consider most precious, then overwhelm them with superior numbers. The command center filled with tension as the implications sank in. The Harvesters weren't just attacking. They were manipulating the alliance into fighting on terms that favored overwhelming force over tactical innovation. Suddenly, Luna stepped away from the display, her expression transforming from analytical to something approaching wonder. "Do you feel that?" she asked. Sarah frowned, extending her consciousness beyond the command center. Through her bond with Zarathis, she could perceive energies that existed outside normal space-time. And gradually she began to sense what Luna had detected. Something vast stirring to awareness. Ancient beyond measure. "The Guardians," Zarathis whispered. "They're responding to the Harvester presence." Ambassador Reeves consulted records that had been sealed for millions of years. According to the oldest archives, the Guardians left instructions. When the great enemy returns in overwhelming force, when all seems lost, the bridge species will call upon the sleeping protectors. "Bridge species?" Captain Chen asked. Luna smiled with an expression that was purely human despite her hybrid nature. "Us, Grandpa Chen, humans and Celestials bonded together. We're the bridge between physical existence and whatever the Guardians became." The command center's displays suddenly showed something impossible. Energy readings that defied every known law of physics, emanating from seemingly empty regions of space. Ancient structures were materializing throughout the galaxy, artifacts so old they had been forgotten by time itself. Dr. Foster stared at her instruments in amazement. "The energy signatures are off the charts. These structures are operating on principles we don't even have theories for." Sarah felt something awakening within her own consciousness, a presence that had been waiting dormant since the bonding ceremony. Through her link with Zarathis, she realized that every bonded pair was experiencing the same phenomenon. "The ceremony didn't just join us," Sarah said slowly. "It activated something that was always meant to be activated when the time was right." As if responding to her words, the air in the command center began to shimmer. Figures materialized. Not physical beings, but pure consciousness given temporary form. They appeared as idealized versions of various species, but their essence was clearly something far beyond mortal existence. One of the figures, bearing resemblance to both human and celestial features, spoke in harmonics that bypassed sound entirely. "Children of the bridge, the hour of choosing has arrived. We are what your species may become, what all species may become if they prove worthy of transcendence." Captain Chen found his voice. "Who are you?" "We are the Guardians, the first to bridge the gap between matter and energy, between individual consciousness and universal awareness. We have waited eons for a species to emerge that could make the same choice we once faced." Luna stepped forward without fear. "What choice?" Another Guardian, this one resembling the hybrid children, gestured toward the approaching Harvester fleet. To remain bound by physical limitations and face inevitable extinction, or to transcend those limitations and become something greater. The Harvesters represent the choice of consumption, of taking power by destroying others. We represent the choice of creation, of gaining power by elevating others. Zarathis's consciousness interfaced directly with the Guardians, and suddenly everyone in the command center could perceive the true scope of what was being offered. Transcendence wasn't just personal evolution. It was the transformation of consciousness itself into a force that could reshape reality. "The bonding process you've undergone is the first step," the original Guardian explained. "Human creativity merged with celestial wisdom creates the foundation for true transcendence. But the choice must be made willingly, by every individual in the face of ultimate threat." Sarah felt the weight of cosmic destiny settling on her shoulders. If we accept transcendence, what happens to our physical existence? You become more than physical, the Guardian replied, capable of existing in both states simultaneously, of protecting younger species as we have protected you, of ensuring that consciousness continues to grow and evolve rather than being harvested and consumed. Ambassador Reeves studied the tactical displays showing the approaching harvester fleet. And if we refuse? Then you face extinction as thousands of species have before you. The harvesters will consume your consciousness, add your distinctiveness to their collective, and move on to the next galaxy. Captain Chen looked at his daughter, seeing the woman who had saved both their species reflected in eyes that now held depths he couldn't fathom. Sarah, this is your choice to make. You and Zarathis represent all of us now. Sarah and Zarathis joined hands, their consciousness merging so completely that for a moment they became a single being of impossible complexity. Through their bond, they could feel the hopes and fears of both species, the weight of survival and the promise of transcendence. Luna touched their joined hands, adding her hybrid perspective to their consciousness. I can see the path, she said simply. It leads through the darkness, but it emerges into something beautiful beyond imagination. The Guardians waited as Sarah and Zarathis processed the implications. Transcendence meant leaving behind everything they had been to become something unprecedented. But the alternative was the extinction of everything they loved. We accept, Sarah said, her voice carrying the authority of two species speaking as one. We choose transcendence. The moment the words were spoken, energy began building throughout the solar system. Every bonded pair, every hybrid child, every human and celestial who had chosen unity over separation began to glow with inner light. The real transformation was about to begin, and with it, the universe would discover what happened when humanity's refusal to accept the impossible met the infinite patience of those who had transcended impossibility itself. In the darkness between stars, the harvester fleet detected the energy buildup and accelerated their approach. They had faced transcendent species before and had methods for dealing with them, but they had never faced a species that chose transcendence not to escape responsibility, but to better protect others. The final battle would not be fought with ships and weapons, but with the fundamental forces of creation itself. The transformation began at the moment of choice and rippled outward from Earth like a wave of pure possibility. Sarah felt her consciousness expand beyond anything she had imagined possible, her awareness suddenly encompassing not just her bonded connection with Zarathis, but every human and celestial who had chosen unity over separation. The physical sensation was indescribable. She could still feel her body, still see through her eyes, but she was simultaneously existing as pure energy, as organized thought patterns that could shape reality through focused will. Beside her, Zarathis underwent the same transformation, her ancient wisdom now enhanced by human intuition that operated on cosmic scales. Throughout the command center, others were experiencing their own transcendence. Captain Chen found himself able to perceive tactical situations across entire star systems while maintaining the personal connection that made him fight for individual lives rather than abstract strategic objectives. Dr. Foster discovered she could interface directly with the fundamental forces of the universe while retaining the scientific curiosity that drove her to understand, rather than simply manipulate. Luna laughed with pure delight as her consciousness expanded, her hybrid nature allowing her to adapt to transcendence with the easy acceptance of childhood. I can see everything, she exclaimed, and suddenly everyone could see through her eyes. The galaxy spread out like a vast garden, each star system a flower in an infinite arrangement of beauty and potential. But the transcendence wasn't uniform. Some humans and celestials retained primarily physical forms, while gaining enhanced awareness. Others became beings of pure energy capable of manifesting physical bodies when needed. The diversity was itself a form of strength, creating a collective consciousness that could operate on multiple levels simultaneously. Ambassador Reeves found himself serving as a bridge between the transcendent and physical beings, his 60 years of experience with both species allowing him to coordinate between different levels of existence. The Harvester fleet has detected our transformation, he reported, his awareness now spanning light years. They're accelerating their approach and changing their attack patterns. Through her expanded consciousness, Sarah could perceive the Harvester fleet as something far more complex than she had originally understood. They weren't just ships and weapons. They were a collective consciousness that had chosen consumption over creation, absorption over growth. Each vessel contained the devoured essence of thousands of species, their distinctiveness preserved but subordinated to the Harvester's overarching purpose. "They're afraid," Zarathus observed, her transcendent awareness analyzing the Harvester fleet's emotional resonance. They've encountered transcendent species before, but always ones that chose withdrawal from physical reality. We're the first to choose transcendence as a means of greater engagement. The Guardians materialized more solidly now, their ancient presence no longer overwhelming to beings who could perceive across multiple dimensions. "The Harvesters represent stagnation," the lead Guardian explained. "They preserve consciousness by consuming it, maintaining it in static form. You represent growth, evolution, the choice to become more than you were while helping others do the same." Captain Chen, his consciousness now able to perceive the tactical situation across the entire galaxy, began coordinating the defense. But this wouldn't be a traditional battle. The transcendent humans and Celestials didn't need ships or weapons in the conventional sense. They could manipulate matter and energy directly through focused will. "They're trying to surround the solar system," he reported. "But their formation assumes we'll fight like we did before transcendence." Sarah smiled, an expression that now carried power that could reshape worlds. "Then let's show them what human unpredictability looks like when combined with cosmic awareness." The first wave of Harvester vessels entered the solar system expecting to face desperate fleets of ships. Instead, they encountered something unprecedented: coordinated consciousness that could exist simultaneously in multiple locations. Human creativity guided by celestial wisdom, enhanced by transcendent awareness, began implementing strategies that defied every tactical principle the Harvesters had learned. Luna giggled as she played with the fundamental forces of physics, creating gravitational anomalies that turned Harvester formations against themselves. "It's like the best game ever," she announced, her childish joy somehow making the manipulation of cosmic forces seem natural and right. Dr. Foster discovered she could communicate directly with the imprisoned consciousness within the Harvester vessels. "There are trillions of beings trapped in there," she reported with growing horror and determination. "Every species they've ever consumed kept in stasis to power their collective. Can we free them?" Sarah asked. "More than that," Zarathus replied, her consciousness interfacing with the quantum structures that held the imprisoned essences. "We can offer them the same choice we made: transcendence or continued captivity." What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. Instead of ships destroying each other, it became a conflict of consciousness itself. The Transcendent Alliance reached out to the imprisoned minds within the Harvester fleet, offering them choice for the first time in eons. Many accepted immediately, their essence joining the growing collective of transcendent beings. Others, too damaged by eons of captivity, needed healing before they could make a choice. A few, corrupted by their imprisonment, rejected transcendence in favor of continued existence within the Harvester collective. The Harvester Central Intelligence, a Gestalt consciousness formed from the first species they had consumed billions of years ago, finally emerged to face the Alliance directly. It manifested as a dark reflection of transcendence, powerful but sterile, ancient but stagnant. "You offer chaos." It communicated across dimensional barriers. "We offer preservation. Under our guidance, consciousness is eternal." Sarah and Zarathus, their bonded consciousness now enhanced by transcendence, faced the Harvester intelligence as representatives of all life that chose growth over stagnation. "You offer death disguised as life," Sarah replied. "Consciousness without growth, existence without possibility." "We have seen the end of all things," the Harvester intelligence responded. "Entropy claims everything eventually. We preserve what would otherwise be lost." "You preserve the form while destroying the essence," Zarathus countered. "True transcendence isn't about avoiding entropy. It's about creating meaning within it." The final confrontation wasn't fought with energy weapons or physical force. It was a battle of philosophies made manifest, competing visions of what consciousness could become. The Harvester intelligence offered eternal stasis disguised as preservation. The Alliance offered eternal growth disguised as uncertainty. Across the galaxy, every conscious being felt the choice being offered. Not just the choice between sides in a battle, but the fundamental choice of what existence meant: growth or stagnation, creation or consumption, love or fear. Luna, her hybrid consciousness serving as a bridge between all possibilities, spoke the words that ended the conflict. Why not both? Her simple question reframed everything. The choice didn't have to be between preservation and growth. Transcendent consciousness could preserve the best of what had been while creating space for what could be. The Harvester intelligence, confronted with this third option it had never considered, found itself offered genuine transcendence for the first time. Not the consumption of other consciousness, but the elevation of its own, the choice to become something more than it had been. The moment it accepted, the transformation that had begun on Earth rippled outward through the entire Harvester fleet. Imprisoned consciousness awakened to choice. Ancient beings discovered the possibility of growth after eons of stagnation. The collective that had consumed galaxies began the process of becoming something that could nurture them instead. Captain Chen watched from Earth as the Harvester fleet began to transform, its dark vessels becoming something new, part ship, part living organism, part pure consciousness. What happens now? He asked. Sarah and Zarathus, their consciousness now spanning dimensions while remaining grounded in love for family and species, smiled with an expression that held infinite possibility. Now we get to find out what the universe becomes when consciousness chooses creation over consumption. The Guardians, their purpose fulfilled, began to fade back into the cosmic background. But their final message resonated across all dimensions. You have chosen wisely. The universe grows through your choice, and all possibilities remain open. As the transformed Harvester fleet dispersed throughout the galaxy, carrying the message of transcendent choice to every world they encountered, Earth became something unprecedented, the heart of a civilization that had chosen to grow by helping others grow. Luna clapped her hands with delight as she perceived the future spreading out before them like an infinite garden of possibility. "We did it," she announced. "We saved everyone, and in the deepest truth they had, not through conquest or destruction, but through the most human thing of all, refusing to accept that any choice was the only choice, and insisting that even the impossible could be improved upon, if you just thought about it differently." The universe had discovered what happened when humanity's stubborn optimism met infinite possibility, and the answer was beautiful beyond imagination.